Have you ever felt like the people who are supposed to love and support you, your family, are the very ones who break you down? What would you do if you discovered that those closest to you were choosing the side of someone who hurt you more than anyone else ever could? This is my story. The moment I walked away, I knew I was crossing a line I could never come back from. But at the time, I was so exhausted from fighting for something that never seemed to matter to anyone but me. The world was spinning in slow motion, and the sound of my own heartbeat was drowning out everything else. It all started one fateful evening. I was sitting at the dinner table with my family, trying to have a normal conversation, pretending everything was fine. It was my mother, my older brother, and me. We were eating spaghetti, one of those meals that is supposed to bring people together, but for us, it was just another one of those awkward dinners where the silence felt louder than the clinking of forks. My mom was trying to make conversation, asking if I had any plans for the weekend. My brother was on his phone, barely even listening. Then the conversation shifted. "You know, your ex-girlfriend called me yesterday," my mother casually said, without looking up from her plate. My stomach sank. My ex, the woman who had torn my heart apart. The woman I spent years loving, only to realize that her love was as toxic as it was consuming. The same woman who manipulated me, played mind games, and made me question my own worth every single day. I tried to brush it off. What did she want? Just checking in, I guess. She seemed really upset. I told her I'd pass along the message to you. My mom finally looked at me, her eyes wide with concern. I tried to keep my voice steady. I don't need to talk to her. I'm over that. But my brother, who had been silent until now, suddenly looked up from his phone. "She's just worried about you, you know? She wasn't all bad, Lil." I froze. Did he just say that? Was he seriously defending her? The same woman who left me crying on the bathroom floor, who told me I wasn't good enough every chance she got. Are you seriously taking her side right now? My voice shook, the anger bubbling up from deep within. Look, I'm not saying she was perfect, but maybe you're being too harsh on her. She loved you in her own way. You should at least give her a chance to apologize. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own brother, my flesh and blood, was defending her, the person who had ruined me. I don't need her apology, Zach. I need you to understand that what she did to me was wrong. My mother, sensing the rising tension, intervened. Lil, calm down. Maybe you should think about talking to her. You're still holding on to a lot of anger. I stood up abruptly, pushing my chair back. The noise echoed through the quiet room. You don't get it. I'm done with her. And I'm done with all of you too. Don't say that, my mother pleaded. We're just trying to help. But I had already made up my mind. I was done. I walked out of the house, not looking back. I could hear my mother calling after me, but I didn't stop. The tears were already streaming down my face, mixing with the cold night air. My chest felt tight, suffocating under the weight of the betrayal I had just witnessed. How could they choose her over me? How could they side with someone who had hurt me so deeply? It wasn't just my ex anymore, it was my family. The people I thought would always be there for me had just let me down in a way I couldn't even begin to explain. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone in my pocket. I saw a missed call, 23 missed calls, to be exact, from my mother. She had been calling nonstop ever since I left. My throat tightened as I stared at the screen, the name Mom flashing over and over again. I didn't want to talk to her. Not yet. But the guilt started to settle in. What if I was being too dramatic? What if I was overreacting? Maybe I was the one who had been wrong all along. I sat in my car, staring out the windshield, the streetlights blurring as the tears continued to fall. But deep down, I knew I wasn't wrong. I knew I had done what was best for me. But the pain of walking away from my family, it was crushing. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to forgive them for this. I didn't know if I could ever trust them again. But I couldn't stay in a place where I wasn't valued, where my pain was brushed aside in favor of someone who didn't deserve it. So I drove. I drove through the night, not knowing where I was going but feeling an overwhelming sense of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't holding on to anyone else's expectations. I wasn't trying to fix something that wasn't meant to be fixed. I was just me. And for the first time, that felt like enough. This was just the beginning of what I would later realize was the hardest journey of my life. I had walked away from everything I thought I knew, my family, my past, my identity, and now I had to figure out what came next. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going back. Not for anyone. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? I wasn't always this way, this person who could walk away from everything without a second thought. There was a time when I thought family was everything, that they were the people who would always have your back no matter what. There was a time when I believed love could heal all wounds and that all relationships could be mended with time. But that was before the walls started closing in, before everything I had ever believed in fell apart around me. I grew up in a small suburban town, one of those places where everyone knew your name, where people were quick to smile and wave as you walked by. My mom, Claire, was the kind of woman who made every house feel like a home. She baked cookies for the neighbors, decorated the house for every holiday, and made sure the entire family was always together for dinner. My dad, on the other hand, wasn't as hands-on. He was a workaholic, often absent, but when he was around, he was always kind and easygoing. He left the heavy lifting to my mom, but never once made us question how much he loved us. Then there was Zach, my older brother. He was the golden child, athletic, charming, and seemingly perfect in every way. People always talked about how proud my parents were of him, how he was going places, how he was the one who always made them look good. I loved Zach. He was my protector, my confidant when I was younger. But as we got older, things started to change. It wasn't that he became a different person, it was just that I started to feel invisible next to him. I wasn't a troublemaker. I wasn't the rebellious one. I was just there. And then, of course, there was Sarah. Sarah was my best friend, my first love, the girl who made me feel seen when no one else did. I met her in high school, and from the very first moment, there was something about her that pulled me in. She had this fire in her eyes, a sharpness that balanced my more laid-back nature. We'd talk for hours on end, sharing everything from our dreams to our fears. She made me feel like I mattered, something that was rare in my family where attention was always divided between Zach and me. But like everything else, that too came with its own complications. Sarah and I had a chemistry that couldn't be ignored, but it was also something neither of us had ever been taught how to handle. Our relationship wasn't like other people's, this constant push and pull, love and hatred, trust and betrayal. Sarah could be sweet and loving one moment, and the next, she'd withdraw, leaving me questioning what went wrong. It was intense, but it felt like a connection I couldn't escape. At first, my family didn't know. It was our secret. Sarah and I were both navigating a world that wasn't ready for us, so we kept our relationship quiet, out of sight, even when it was tearing me apart inside. I'd watch as my parents smiled at Zach's accomplishments, his trophies and awards hanging proudly on the walls, while I shrunk in the background, not knowing where I fit in. My brother, too, was always the one who got the praise, the attention, while I quietly wished for just a fraction of it. My love for Sarah was the one thing that made me feel special, but even that, I kept hidden. It wasn't long before things started to unravel. I noticed how Sarah would disappear for days, how she would get close, then pull away like she had to be in control of everything. And the more I tried to hold on, the further she seemed to slip from my grasp. It wasn't a one-sided problem. Sarah wasn't the only one at fault. I had my own baggage to carry. I wasn't perfect, either. I didn't know how to be the person she needed me to be, and that led to a lot of confusion and hurt. It was also around this time that my family began to notice something was off. They didn't know exactly what it was, but they saw the changes in me. I became withdrawn, short-tempered. I wasn't my usual self anymore. I wasn't coming around for dinner as much, and when I did, I found it harder to smile. My mom would ask me what was wrong, and I'd brush it off with some vague answer, never telling her about Sarah, about what we were going through. Then came the day I couldn't hold it in anymore. One evening, my mom found me sitting on the porch, staring out into the night. My heart felt heavy, weighed down by everything I couldn't control. She sat down beside me, her presence warm and comforting, like it always was. "Lil," she said gently, "what's going on? You've been distant lately." I hesitated. The words I wanted to say were stuck in my throat. What could I say to my mom? "I'm in love with her," was what I wanted to tell her, but the words didn't come out. Instead, I sat there in silence, wondering if my family would ever understand. "Mom," I said after a long pause, "I don't think Sarah and I are going to work out. It's complicated. We keep fighting, and it's just not healthy anymore." She looked at me, her expression softening. "Love is hard, Lil. But you have to take care of yourself first. You don't owe anyone your peace, not even her." I was relieved she hadn't pried, but the conversation didn't make anything easier. My relationship with Sarah was always in a constant state of flux. But even with all the ups and downs, I never thought I'd be where I was now on the outside looking in at a family who, at the time, felt like strangers. They didn't understand how I felt about Sarah or why I couldn't let go of her, even when it hurt. They didn't get the complicated mess that had become my relationship with her. To them, she was just another girl I had dated, and if things fell apart, I could move on. But I couldn't. I couldn't let go of the connection we shared. That's when things started to shift. My relationship with Sarah, my growing resentment of my family's ignorance, and the feelings of isolation all began to collide. The frustration I felt with Sarah was starting to bleed into everything else. My family had no idea how deep my pain ran, how much I had sacrificed for someone who didn't even know how to love me in return. But they would soon learn. It wasn't long after the conversation with my mom that the cracks in my life began to widen. At first, I thought maybe things would settle down, that maybe I could handle everything if I just kept my distance from Sarah and focused on my family. But the tension was building, slowly and steadily, like a storm that I could feel brewing on the horizon. I had no idea just how quickly everything would start to unravel. The first blow came when Zach called me. "Hey, Lil, you okay?" His voice sounded a little too casual, like he was trying to act like he cared, but didn't quite know how. The truth was, I hadn't heard from him much lately, and the few times I did speak to him, it felt like he was talking to a stranger. But when he called that evening, I figured it was an attempt to check in. "I'm fine," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the tension rising in my chest. The words felt hollow. "Look, I know things have been weird, but we need to talk about Sarah," he said, his voice dropping slightly, as if he was aware he was stepping into dangerous territory. I felt a lump form in my throat. "What about her?" He paused for a long time. "Mom and Dad want to talk to you about her. They think you're just being stubborn, that you need to make up with her. They don't understand why you can't just forgive her, Lil." There it was, the betrayal I had been fearing. My family was siding with her. Of course, it wasn't outright. They didn't say they were taking Sarah's side. But their refusal to see the toxic nature of our relationship, their belief that I should just move on, was a betrayal in itself. "I can't believe you're doing this," I said, my voice trembling with frustration. "You have no idea what it's been like, Zach. You don't know what she put me through. She's not a monster, Lil. She's just messed up like everyone else. Maybe you should try being more forgiving. You've always been so hard on people." It felt like a slap in the face. It was like he didn't even care enough to understand the depths of the pain I had been dealing with. I wanted to scream, to explain how every interaction with Sarah felt like a mind game, how she would twist my words, make me feel like I was crazy for even questioning her love. But the words never came. Instead, I just muttered, "I don't want to talk about this anymore," and hung up the phone. The conversation left me feeling hollow, like I had just been dismissed in my own home, by my own family. I couldn't shake the feeling that no one really understood me, no one really cared enough to try. Later that night, I was scrolling through my phone, desperately trying to distract myself from the pain. But it was hard to escape the reality of the situation. The missed calls from my mom kept piling up. 23 missed calls, to be exact. Each one felt like a sharp reminder of my family's relentless need for control, their need to fix something they didn't understand. I took a deep breath and decided I couldn't keep ignoring them. I needed to make a decision. I called her back. "Lil, where are you? You haven't answered my calls. Why won't you come home?" My mother's voice was filled with concern, but there was also an edge of frustration in it. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who tried to hold everything together, even when it felt like the world was falling apart. But I didn't want to be held together anymore. I was done pretending. "I can't come home, Mom." "I don't want to be there," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the tears threatening to break free. "I can't keep pretending like everything's okay when you're all choosing her over me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear my mom's breath catch, but she didn't say anything right away. Finally, she spoke. "We're not choosing her over you, Lil. We just think you're holding on to a lot of anger, and it's not healthy. We want you to forgive her. We want you to let go of this." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My own mother was telling me to forgive the woman who had broken me. "You don't get it," I said through clenched teeth. "You don't know what it's like to be gaslit every day, to feel like you're losing yourself just because someone says they love you. You don't understand, and I'm not going to pretend like you do." There was another silence, this one longer than the last. I could feel my mom's disappointment over the phone, but there was something else too, something I couldn't quite place. A distance. A separation that I couldn't bridge, no matter how hard I tried. "I just want you to be happy, Lil," she said, her voice quieter now. "Please think about what you're doing. We're your family. We just want to help." But I wasn't sure if that was even true anymore. My family wasn't just concerned about my happiness, they were concerned about their image, about keeping the peace, about protecting the person who had hurt me the most. I felt like I was drowning, trapped between the person I had been and the person they wanted me to be. I hung up before she could say anything else. My heart was pounding in my chest. I was angry, I was hurt, but most of all, I was confused. What was I supposed to do when the people who should have had my back were standing with the person who had torn me apart? I stood up from the couch, pacing back and forth. The walls were closing in, the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me from all sides. The conflict was rising, growing bigger and louder with each passing minute. I couldn't keep ignoring it. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. I was done. But that didn't make it easier. The rising conflict in my life was taking me down a path I wasn't sure I could come back from. And deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The day I walked out of my family's life felt like a moment suspended in time. It wasn't like a dramatic confrontation or a well-planned exit. It was more like a slow build-up, a culmination of everything that had been brewing beneath the surface for years. Walking out wasn't something I had planned. It wasn't a decision I made after a heated argument. It was something that had been building in me, quietly, slowly, until the moment it exploded. It was a week after the phone call with my mom, the one where I felt completely unheard. The missed calls had stopped, and for the first time in what felt like forever, my phone was silent. That silence was deafening. I had no idea what they were doing, or if they were even still thinking about me. But I couldn't wait for them to come around. I couldn't keep clinging to the hope that someone would finally understand. So I packed a bag. I didn't even think twice about it. I grabbed the essentials, clothes, a few books, my laptop, and most importantly, my journal. I knew I wouldn't come back. Not yet, at least. Not until I had sorted out my own feelings, until I had figured out what I really wanted. Sarah had tried to reach out to me in the days that followed, her text messages becoming increasingly desperate. "Where are you? I'm sorry. Let's talk." But I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I, when everything between us was a tangled mess of love, hate, and regret? The truth was, I was afraid of what I might do if I saw her. If I let her back into my life, into my heart, I wasn't sure if I would survive the consequences. Because in my gut, I knew what I needed to do, and it terrified me. I needed to let her go. I needed to let go of everything that had tied me to her, everything that had made me lose myself for her. But I didn't know how. I didn't know how to walk away from someone who had once felt like my entire world. So, I left. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I just left a note for my mom. "I need space. I'll figure it out on my own." It wasn't much, but it was enough. My family would have to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. I wasn't going to pretend that everything was okay when it wasn't. I wasn't going to let anyone, family, friends, Sarah, decide what my life was supposed to look like anymore. The journey I embarked on that day wasn't physical. It wasn't about going to a new place or starting a new chapter in a literal sense. It was an emotional journey, one where I had to confront my past, my feelings, my fears. It was about finding the strength to reclaim my identity, the strength to let go of everything that had held me captive for so long. I rented a small apartment in a quiet part of town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one knew where I was, and that was the way I wanted it. I needed to breathe without the constant pressure of expectations. I needed space to think, to breathe, to feel. I spent my days in that apartment, reading, journaling, reflecting on everything that had led me to this point. But I also spent a lot of time crying, grieving for the parts of my life that had been lost forever. I thought about Sarah every day. I thought about the love we had shared, the connection that had felt so real, so intense. But I also thought about the pain, the manipulation, the ways she had made me question myself. There were days when I wanted to call her, days when I wanted to throw everything away and go back to her. But I couldn't. I couldn't risk losing myself again. It wasn't long before my family reached out. My dad, of all people, called me first. "Lil, this isn't you. You've always been close to us. What's going on? We're worried." I hadn't spoken to him in over a week, and hearing his voice, filled with concern, made something twist in my chest. I wanted to tell him everything, the truth about Sarah, about how hurt I felt, about how my family had failed to see the pain I was in. But I couldn't. I didn't have the words. I wasn't ready to confront them, not yet. "I'm fine, Dad. I just need some time," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Lil, you don't have to do this alone. We're here for you, no matter what." His words felt hollow to me. They should have been comforting, but all I could hear was the same thing that had always been there, the unspoken pressure to fit in, to be who they wanted me to be. It wasn't enough anymore. "I don't need you to fix it, Dad. I just need you to understand that I'm doing this for me," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. There was a pause, a long silence that seemed to stretch for miles. And then, in the quietest tone, he said, "We don't understand. But we love you, Lil. Always." Those words hit me harder than I expected. My heart ached at the thought of everything I was leaving behind, my family, my past, the life I thought I was supposed to have. But even in that ache, I knew I was doing the right thing. The journey I had started wasn't just about leaving Sarah, about walking away from the chaos. It was about finding my own path, about reclaiming the pieces of me that I had lost along the way. It was about realizing that sometimes, to move forward, you have to let go of everything that's holding you back. Even if that means walking away from the people who are supposed to love you the most. As I sat alone in my apartment that night, staring out the window at the city lights below, I realized something important. This wasn't just a journey of escape. This was a journey of discovery. I wasn't running from my past. I was running toward my future. And for the first time in a long time, that thought gave me hope. The days blurred together in my little apartment. Some mornings, I would wake up and wonder if I had made a mistake. But most of the time, I felt a deep sense of relief. It was like I could finally breathe again, like I had been suffocating for years and hadn't even realized it. I spent my time journaling, working, and going for long walks, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. But even as the days passed, the emotional weight didn't lift. It only became heavier. The phone calls from my family became less frequent, but that didn't mean they had given up. They were relentless. Each message felt like a small tug on my heart, a constant reminder that I had chosen this path. They didn't understand. How could they? How could anyone truly understand the turmoil of being caught between love and destruction, between family and freedom? But it wasn't until one particular evening that everything came to a head, the day I got the call from Sarah. I had been out for a walk, as I often did to clear my head, when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me who it was. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello, Lil, it's Sarah." Her voice was shaky, laced with something I couldn't place, fear, perhaps, or desperation. "We need to talk." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, everything around me went still. The world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to respond. And for the first time in weeks, I found myself at a loss for words. "I can't do this, Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't go back to what we were. I can't. It's too much. You're too much." There was a long pause, and for a moment, I thought she had hung up. But then she spoke again, her voice breaking. "Please, Lil, I'm sorry. I know I messed up. I've hurt you, and I don't know how to fix it. But I can't lose you. I can't." The desperation in her voice cut through me like a knife. I wanted to cry, to scream, to tell her that everything she was saying was too little, too late. I wanted to ask her why she hadn't fought for me before, why she hadn't cared when it mattered. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I just stood there, paralyzed by the words that seemed to echo through my mind. "I can't lose you." It was the same thing she had always said when things got tough, when I threatened to walk away. But every time, she had never done the work to actually change. She just expected me to forgive her and come back. "You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay," I replied, my voice shaking now. "Do you even understand what you've done to me? The way you manipulated me made me question myself, made me feel like I wasn't enough." Another pause. I could hear her breathing through the phone, ragged and uneven. "I do understand," she said quietly. "But I love you, Lil, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to show you that I can change." It was in that moment that everything snapped into focus. For so long, I had been holding on to the idea of Sarah, to the person I had once thought she could be. I had convinced myself that I was the problem, that maybe if I just tried harder, if I just loved her more, things would be different. But the truth was, I had been lying to myself. I had been holding on to a fantasy, a version of Sarah that never existed. And in doing so, I had lost myself. "I don't think I can ever trust you again, Sarah," I said, the words coming out more forcefully than I had intended. "I don't think I can ever be the person you want me to be." There was a long, heavy silence. Then she whispered, "I understand. I guess this is goodbye then." Her words were the final blow. They didn't hurt as much as I thought they would. In fact, they felt almost freeing. Because in that moment, I realized something I had been avoiding for so long. I wasn't the one who had been wrong. I wasn't the one who had failed. It had always been Sarah. It had always been the way she manipulated and controlled, the way she twisted things to make me feel like I was the problem. And, for the first time, I had the strength to walk away, to leave her behind. "I guess it is," I replied, my voice steady now, stronger than I had ever felt before. "Goodbye, Sarah." And then I hung up the phone. For a moment, I just stood there, the weight of what I had just done sinking in. But there was no sense of regret, no lingering doubt. There was only relief. It was like a weight had been lifted off my chest, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I could breathe again. But as the days passed, I began to realize something. Even though I had let go of Sarah, even though I had severed that toxic tie, I hadn't fully let go of the pain. I hadn't fully processed the damage that had been done, both to me and to my family. It wasn't just about Sarah. It was about everything that had led me here, the way I had allowed myself to be manipulated, the way I had let my family's expectations shape my choices, the way I had lost sight of who I really was. The emotional climax of my journey wasn't the moment I left Sarah. It wasn't the phone call or the goodbye. It was realizing that, in order to truly move forward, I had to confront my past. I had to face the pain, the anger, the hurt. I couldn't just bury it and pretend it didn't exist. I had to deal with it, face it head-on, if I ever wanted to heal. And that was the hardest part of all. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? It's strange, isn't it? How much of life is about waiting? Waiting for the right moment to leave, to start fresh, to let go of what weighs you down. And yet, it isn't until after you've made that decision that you realize the true weight of what you've just done. The path ahead doesn't immediately become clear. It doesn't unfold like a perfect, pristine road. Instead, it stretches out before you like an uncharted wilderness, filled with uncertainty, doubts, and questions. In the weeks following my departure from Sarah and my family, I experienced a range of emotions I hadn't expected. There were moments of pure clarity where I felt liberated, like I had cast off chains I hadn't even known were there. Then, there were moments of deep loneliness. It was the kind of loneliness that felt like it could swallow you whole. The silence of my apartment would press against my chest, reminding me that while I had taken control of my life, I was still wrestling with what that really meant. I spent a lot of time in my apartment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city outside my window. The days were long, sometimes unbearably so. But every morning, I forced myself to get out of bed, to take small steps toward rediscovery. I started a new project at work that had nothing to do with Sarah or my past life. I enrolled in an art class, something I had always wanted to do, but never had the courage to pursue before. I began writing again, really writing, not just journaling or scribbling down my thoughts. My mind, once a tangled mess of confusion and anger, started to clear. But even as I made these small strides toward healing, there was one thing I couldn't avoid. I still wasn't sure who I was. Without Sarah, without my family's expectations, without the pressure to always be something for someone else. That was the paradox. I had left everything behind, yet I still felt like I was searching for something. But what was it? What was I really looking for? One night, while sitting on the couch, flipping through a notebook of old journal entries, I came across something I had written years ago. It was a line I had completely forgotten about. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to finally understand what you really need. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I had spent so much of my life trying to fit into the roles my family and Sarah had crafted for me. I had always tried to be what they needed me to be, but in doing so, I lost myself. I didn't even know what I wanted, what I needed. I had tried to save everyone else and ended up drowning in the process. And now here I was, standing on my own, trying to figure out how to rebuild. But this time, I was doing it for me, not for anyone else. And that was the key to everything. I had to give myself the space to grow, to be imperfect, to not have all the answers. It was okay to be lost for a little while. In fact, it was necessary. Because in that lost space, there was room to discover who I really was, independent of everyone else's demands. I reflected on the relationship with Sarah. For so long, I had been trapped in the narrative she had written for us, a narrative of love and betrayal, of longing and rejection. It was painful, but as I looked back, I realized that I had learned something important from it all. I had learned about boundaries, about recognizing when enough was enough. I had learned that love, true love, doesn't manipulate or control. It builds, it supports, and it heals. I thought about my family, too. The expectation of their love had been a heavy burden. I had always thought I was supposed to make them proud, to be the perfect daughter. But in the process, I had never asked myself what I needed from them, what I needed from anyone. I realized that the love they had for me wasn't conditional, it was just complicated. They didn't understand me, and they might never fully understand the choices I had made. But that didn't mean I had to carry their expectations on my shoulders anymore. I had to stop letting their love be my validation. The hardest part of this journey was accepting that not everything would be healed overnight. Some wounds take time, and some scars will never completely fade. But that didn't mean I wouldn't heal. It didn't mean I wouldn't grow. Every step, no matter how small, was progress. I didn't need to have all the answers. I just needed to keep moving forward. I reached out to my mom again. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks, and although it wasn't easy, I knew it was time. I dialed her number, my heart racing as I waited for her to pick up. "Hello." Her voice sounded tentative, like she wasn't sure if I was still angry with her. "Hey, Mom." "It's me," I said, taking a deep breath. "I just wanted to check in." I think I'm doing okay. But I miss you. I miss us." There was a long pause. I could hear her taking a shaky breath on the other end of the line. "I miss you too, Lil," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I know I didn't understand, and I didn't know how to help. I just wanted to fix everything, but I see now that I wasn't really listening to you." That hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear those words, how much I had been craving an apology that wasn't just about me being wrong, but about her acknowledging that her actions had hurt me, too. "I know, Mom. And I'm sorry, too. For shutting you out. But I needed to figure things out on my own. I needed to find myself again." "I get it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Just know that we love you. Always." Those words, simple and honest, were exactly what I needed to hear. They weren't a solution, but they were a step toward healing. They were a reminder that even though things weren't perfect, they didn't have to be. Love, true love, wasn't about perfection. It was about understanding, forgiveness, and the willingness to grow together, even after everything had fallen apart. And in that moment, I realized that I had learned the most important lesson of all: I am enough, just as I am. The rest of the world may not always understand, but I don't need anyone else's validation anymore. I've found my voice. I've found my strength. And I'm ready to live my life on my own terms. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't a neat conclusion. But that's what made it real. Life is messy, complicated, and painful at times. But it's also full of beauty, growth, and second chances. I had given myself the chance to start over, to heal, and to rediscover who I was. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. The days that followed felt like a quiet sort of tension. While I had come to peace with my decision, a new sense of uncertainty crept in. Every day felt like a little battle, one where I faced myself, my past, and the uncertainty of the future. But despite the lingering doubts, there was also something new, a faint but steady feeling that maybe I was starting to become who I was always meant to be. I continued to go through the motions of my new routine. Work was busier, which was a relief. I threw myself into it, eager for something to occupy my mind. But even as I worked, something in me felt restless. It was almost as if I was waiting for something, a sign, a shift, something that would tell me I had truly moved on, something that would signify I was no longer stuck in the past. Then, one afternoon, I got the call. I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at it and saw the name flash across the screen, Sarah. My heart skipped a beat. It had been weeks since I'd heard from her. Weeks of silence. Weeks of clarity. Why was she calling now? I stared at the phone, my hand frozen in midair as I debated whether to answer. The familiar wave of anxiety rushed through me, but I quickly reminded myself that I was stronger now. I had walked away from all of it. Whatever this was, I could handle it. Taking a deep breath, I excused myself from the meeting and stepped outside the conference room, away from the noise. I answered the call with a trembling voice, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Hello, Lil." Sarah's voice came through the phone, soft and full of hesitation. There was a momentary crack in her tone that immediately caught my attention. It wasn't the usual confident, manipulative Sarah I'd known. This was different. Vulnerable. "What's going on, Sarah?" I asked, my voice steadier now, although my heart was racing. "Why are you calling me?" I need to talk to you," she said, almost pleading. "There's something I didn't tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My stomach dropped. What could she possibly say that I hadn't already heard? Was it another attempt at manipulation? Another way to pull me back into her world of chaos? "Why now?" I asked, my voice sharp with frustration. "You've had weeks. What's so urgent?" "I didn't want to tell you this over the phone," she replied. "But you have a right to know." I didn't know how to say it before. "Say what?" I was growing impatient, my mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts. "What is it, Sarah?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could feel her hesitation, the weight of whatever it was she was about to say. And then, she finally spoke. "I'm pregnant, Lil." The words hit like a thunderclap. For a moment, I couldn't process what she had just said. My mind struggled to make sense of the declaration. Pregnant? She was pregnant? What? I breathed, feeling a mix of shock and disbelief. "How, when?" You didn't even tell me you were seeing anyone." "It's not who you think," she continued quickly. "It's not some random guy. It's Jason. My ex. The one I told you about." The revelation hit me with the force of a tidal wave, sweeping away everything I thought I knew. Jason. Of course, it had to be him. My mind raced back to all the times Sarah had told me about him, about the toxic, manipulative relationship they'd shared. And now she was pregnant with his child? I didn't know how to react. On one hand, I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that this was just another one of her chaotic, reckless decisions. But on the other hand, something in me, a quiet, reluctant part, couldn't help but feel sympathy. She was in pain. She was terrified, just like I had been. "I'm sorry," I finally said, my voice softer now. "I don't know what to say. You should have told me sooner." "I know," Sarah replied. "But I didn't want you to think I was weak. I didn't want you to see me as someone who couldn't make it on her own. But now, I realize I was wrong. I can't do this alone, Lil. I need you. I need your help." There was a deep silence between us. For the first time, I realized how much I had changed. In the past, I would have dropped everything to help her, to be there for her, no matter what. But now, I was different. I had walked away. I had drawn a line. And though I still cared about her, I also understood that I couldn't go back to that place. "I can't help you, Sarah," I said firmly. "Not the way you want me to. I can't be the person you keep running to every time things get tough. You need to figure this out on your own." "I know," she whispered. "I just thought, maybe we could fix things. Maybe we could try again." My heart ached at her words, but I held firm. "I can't fix you, Sarah. I can't fix anything. I've spent too many years trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. I've had to let go of that part of myself. And you have to do the same." She was quiet for a moment, and then, with a voice laced with sadness, she said, "I understand. I miss you, Lil. I really do." "I miss you too," I said, feeling a tightness in my chest. "But this isn't the answer. We both need to move on." And with that, I hung up. I stood there in the empty hallway, the weight of the conversation sinking in. My heart was heavy, but I felt stronger than I had in a long time. This was the closure I needed. I had finally given myself permission to walk away completely, to let go of the past that had been holding me back for so long. It wasn't about Sarah anymore. It wasn't about the family or the expectations. It was about me, about what I needed, about finding my own peace. As I walked back into the meeting, I felt like I was finally free. The phone call had shattered the final illusion I had about my past, and now I could truly move forward, no longer burdened by guilt, by regret, or by the constant pull of toxic relationships. I was ready for what came next, ready to embrace the unknown. In the days that followed my conversation with Sarah, things began to shift both in my mind and in my life. I had drawn a firm line between the life I was leaving behind and the one I was building for myself, and the reality of that change was settling in. No more distractions, no more looking back. For the first time in months, I felt a calmness take over me that I hadn't known I was capable of. But with that calmness came the inevitable realization that life was never as simple as just moving on. It wasn't enough to walk away from the past. I had to learn how to live in the present, to fully embrace the life I had started to carve out for myself. That was the next challenge. Work became both a sanctuary and a battleground. I dove into it headfirst, using it as a way to distract myself from the silence that filled my apartment in the evenings. But as busy as I was, something gnawed at me. I was still, in many ways, a work in progress. Despite the strides I had made in finding peace, there were still moments when I felt that ache. An emptiness that came from trying to build a new life on my own. One evening, while I was sorting through emails in my apartment, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my mom. "Can we talk? I think it's time we meet." I stared at the message, hesitation washing over me. We had spoken a few times since the confrontation with Sarah, but it wasn't the same. I had said everything I needed to say to her, and yet there was still so much left unsaid. I thought about it for a long time. Was I ready for this? Was I ready to face my family again? The truth was, I wasn't entirely sure. I wasn't sure if I could handle reopening the wounds that had been slowly healing, but I knew this was an important step. If I was going to move forward, I had to face the past head-on. I took a deep breath, grabbed my jacket, and headed out the door. When I arrived at the cafe where we agreed to meet, my mom was already there. She was sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug, her face tired but soft. She looked up as I approached, and for a brief moment, I saw the same mother I had always known. But there was something different now, something fragile in her eyes. "I'm glad you came," she said quietly as I sat down. Her voice wasn't the stern, controlling tone I had grown so used to. It was vulnerable, almost apologetic. "Yeah, me too," I replied, my voice uncertain. "I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I think it's time." She nodded, her eyes searching my face. "I don't want to make excuses for everything that's happened, Lil. But I want you to know that I never wanted to hurt you. I think I just didn't know how to be there for you. I didn't understand what you needed." I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the emotions that threatened to rise. "I know, Mom. I know. I think I needed you to see me for who I was, not for what you wanted me to be." There was a long silence between us, the weight of our words hanging in the air. And then, finally, she spoke again. "You were always enough, Lil. I see that now. I didn't know how to let you go. I thought I was helping you by holding on tighter. But I see now that I was just pushing you further away." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I've been angry for so long, Mom. Angry because I felt like you didn't understand me. Angry because I thought you didn't care. But the truth is, I was angry at myself, too. I didn't know how to find my own voice, how to live my life without constantly trying to please everyone else." Her face softened, and I could see the genuine regret in her eyes. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have listened. I should have trusted you." The words she spoke hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly on the same page. The anger, the disappointment, the sadness, it was all still there, but it was beginning to dissolve, replaced by something I hadn't expected: understanding. "I know you love me, Mom." "I know that now," I said, my voice a little steadier. "And I love you too. But I need to do this on my own. I need to figure out who I am without the expectations, without trying to fix everything for everyone else. She nodded slowly. I understand. I'll always be here for you, no matter what. I just want you to be happy, Lil. I want you to be free. Her words made something inside me shift. I had been carrying so much for so long, and to hear her say she wanted me to be happy, that she was giving me permission to let go of the past, it was more than I had ever asked for. The conversation shifted after that. We spoke more honestly, more openly. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. But it was real. It was a step forward for both of us. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the quiet of the apartment felt different. It wasn't oppressive anymore. It wasn't filled with the emptiness of what had been lost. Instead, it felt like a blank canvas. The future was still uncertain, but I had the tools to face it. I had the strength to walk into it, even if I wasn't sure exactly what it would look like. In a way, I was learning to embrace the messiness of life. The imperfect relationships, the mistakes, the moments of doubt. They were all part of the process. They were all part of my story. And I had learned one crucial thing. I didn't need to have everything figured out. I didn't need to be perfect. All I needed to do was keep moving forward, one step at a time. Because the road ahead wasn't about being perfect. It was about living. And I was finally ready to do that. It had been a few weeks since I met with my mom, and something within me had shifted. The old anger, the bitterness, had faded away like fog in the morning sun. I didn't know how to explain it, but I felt lighter. The weight of carrying the past on my shoulders had been slowly lifted, and though the future was still uncertain, it felt a little more manageable now. But as with all things, there was always the looming question, was I truly free from it all? Or was I just delaying the inevitable? I knew I had walked away from Sarah, and I had confronted my mother, but the reality of the toxic patterns I had been raised in was still ingrained in me. I had been taught to stay, to try, to fix things even when they were beyond repair. The question wasn't just about Sarah or my mom anymore. It was about me. Was I still perpetuating the same cycles that had trapped me for years? Was I really capable of breaking free, or was I just pretending? I had made so many promises to myself over the years. I had promised to never let myself be trapped again. I had promised that I wouldn't be a slave to the expectations of others. But the truth was, there were still moments when I doubted my own strength. And then, there was Jason. I hadn't thought about him much since that day. He was Sarah's past, her mistake. It wasn't my problem anymore. But as I lay in bed one night, my phone buzzing with a text, I saw his name flash across the screen. Jason, we need to talk. I know you've been through a lot, but I need your help. My first instinct was to block him, to delete the message and move on. I wasn't going back into that mess. But something stopped me. The old part of me, the one that had been conditioned to help, to fix, to heal, she still existed, just beneath the surface. I stared at the text for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing. Why now? Why, after everything that had happened between us, would he reach out to me? What could he possibly need from me? I knew I couldn't just ignore it. But I wasn't sure if I was ready to face him, to dive back into the tangled web of my past. It felt like opening a door I had worked so hard to keep closed. Finally, after a few minutes of hesitation, I typed a response. What do you need help with? I hit send before I could second-guess myself. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I needed to know why he was reaching out, and I needed to confront whatever demons still lurked from that time in my life. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Jason, it's Sarah. She's been acting strange. I don't know what's going on with her. She keeps talking about you, saying things that don't make sense. I think she needs you. I don't know what to do anymore. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt paralyzed. Sarah was acting strange? What did that even mean? I didn't want to care. I didn't want to get pulled back into her world, into her chaos. But something inside me stirred. Was she okay? What had happened? I stared at my phone, torn between the anger I felt toward her and the lingering sense of responsibility I still carried. I'm done with this, I thought. I'm done being the one who fixes things for everyone else. But another part of me, a quieter part, reminded me of the bond we shared. The history, the love we once had. I wasn't just going to abandon her, no matter how much I had been hurt. So, I sent a simple reply, "Where is she?" A few hours later, I found myself standing outside Sarah's apartment building. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of emotions crashing through me. Anger, fear, concern. But there was also a sense of finality in this. This wasn't about fixing her anymore. This was about closing the chapter once and for all. When I walked up to her door and knocked, I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe an apology. Maybe a scene. I didn't know. But when the door opened, what I saw wasn't what I had imagined. Sarah was standing in front of me, disheveled and pale. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her face was streaked with tears. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. "Lil," she whispered, almost as if she couldn't believe I was really there. "What's going on, Sarah?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was worried. "I don't know what's happening to me," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I was fine. I thought I could handle everything. But now I feel like I'm losing control. I'm losing myself." I took a step closer, unsure of what to say. This wasn't the Sarah I had known. This wasn't the manipulative person who always played the victim. This was someone broken, someone who had reached their breaking point. "You're not losing control," I said gently. "You just need help. You need to talk to someone. Someone who can help you understand what's going on." She shook her head. "I can't. I don't know who to trust anymore. I thought you'd be the one to help me. I thought maybe you could fix me." I closed my eyes briefly, the weight of her words sinking in. "I can't fix you, Sarah," I thought. "I can't fix anyone." "Sarah," I said, taking a deep breath, "I can't fix you. I can't fix anything. And I'm not the person who can save you anymore. You have to save yourself." Her eyes widened in shock, as if the words I'd just spoken had shattered a piece of her. But deep down, I knew they were the truth. I had spent so long trying to fix others, to carry their burdens. But I couldn't keep doing that. I had to let go. "I'm sorry," I whispered, stepping back. "But this is the last time I'm going to be pulled into this." And with that, I turned and walked away. As I walked back to my car, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the resolution I thought I'd find. It wasn't a perfect ending. But it was closure. I had let go. For the first time in a long time, I was free from the cycles that had defined my life. And I was ready to step into the future, whatever it might hold. It was strange how things started to feel lighter after that day. Walking away from Sarah's apartment felt like closing a door I had been reluctant to shut for far too long. The air outside was cool, the sky clear, and I found myself breathing a little easier with each step I took. It wasn't just the physical distance between Sarah and me that felt freeing. It was the emotional weight I had been carrying for years that was finally starting to fall away. As I drove home, I thought about all the things I had learned, all the things I had been forced to confront in recent months. I had walked through fire, faced my demons, and made choices that would determine the rest of my life. In a way, I was still scared of what lay ahead. But I no longer felt the need to control everything. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where I was going. But for the first time, I knew I didn't have to have everything figured out to move forward. I was enough. And that realization made all the difference. The next few days were filled with an unexpected peace. The chaos of my past was fading into the distance, and I was learning to embrace the simple joys of life. I woke up in the mornings without that gnawing feeling in my stomach. I went to work, came home, and spent time alone, allowing myself to be in my own company. I learned to cook a new recipe, something I had been afraid to try in the past. I went for walks in the park, savoring the quiet and the stillness that now defined my days. But the true test came when I received an unexpected phone call. It was from Jason. My heart skipped a beat when I saw his name on the screen. It had been a few weeks since I last heard from him, and I wasn't sure what to expect this time. Was he calling for Sarah again? Was there something I didn't know? I hesitated for a moment, but then pressed accept. Hello, I said cautiously, not sure if I was ready to hear whatever he had to say. Lil, Jason's voice came through, quiet and a little uncertain. I know this is probably the last thing you want to hear from me, but I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. About how I screwed up. I listened to his words carefully, unsure of how to respond. It had been so long since we had spoken, and the man on the other end of the phone felt so different from the one I had known. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to want to talk to me, he continued. But I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I don't know if it means anything to you now, but I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was silent for a long time, unsure of what to say. I had spent so much time resenting him, hating him for the way he had hurt me. But the anger was gone now. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. Jason, I finally spoke, my voice soft but steady. You don't need to apologize to me. You don't owe me anything anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the weight of his regret in his silence. I just wanted to make things right, he said quietly. I know you do, I said, my heart a little softer than it had been when I first answered the phone. But sometimes making things right means letting go. It means understanding that we can't always fix what's broken. He sighed. I get that. I'm just trying to figure things out. You were always the one person I could count on, and I don't know how to live with myself knowing I let you down. I'm sorry you're struggling, I replied, my voice gentle. But you have to learn how to forgive yourself. You have to move on too. There was another long pause, and then Jason finally spoke. I don't know how to do that. But I'll try. I don't want to keep dragging you into my mess anymore. I guess I just needed to hear from you. You don't need me to fix you, Jason, I said, my words firmer now. You need to fix yourself. And I hope you do. But I can't be the one to save you. I understand, he said softly. Thank you, Lil. We both stayed silent for a moment, the weight of everything we had been through hanging in the air. I could feel the shift, though it wasn't dramatic or sudden, but it was real. He was letting go. And I was too. I wish you the best, Jason, I said, my voice steady. I really do. I wish you the best too, he replied, before the line went quiet. And just like that, we were done. There was no closure, no perfect resolution, but there didn't need to be. I had let go. And in doing so, I had found a new strength, a strength I never thought I'd have. I had broken the cycle. A few days later, I found myself standing at the threshold of a new chapter in my life. I had moved into a new apartment, smaller, quieter, but filled with the possibility of a fresh start. The walls were bare, but I had a vision for what I wanted to create. The space felt like my own, like I was finally taking ownership of my life. It wasn't perfect. The world wasn't perfect. But for the first time in a long time, I was no longer fighting against it. I was simply living in it. And that was enough. It was the quiet moments that always seemed to stir the most profound feelings in me. The ones where there were no distractions, no loud conversations, no urgent texts, no reminders of the past, and I was simply left alone with my thoughts. As I sat on my new couch, sipping tea, the world outside my window still and peaceful, I realized how far I had come. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't over yet. But I had reached a place where I could finally breathe. I had taken the final step toward reclaiming my life. The emptiness of the apartment wasn't as daunting as I thought it would be. It was peaceful, almost serene, and it felt like an intentional space for growth. My personal things were slowly making their way into the apartment, but what mattered more wasn't the stuff. It was the mental space I had created for myself. The weight of guilt, shame, and toxic love had been shed. It felt foreign in a way, but also liberating. I wasn't the same person I was 6 months ago, even a month ago. I stood by the window, staring out at the city. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the horizon. It felt like the world was giving me permission to finally relax, to rest after all the turmoil I had gone through. But beneath that peaceful exterior, there was still a part of me that asked, did I really change? The phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling me from my thoughts. I almost ignored it, not wanting to disrupt the peace. But something told me that I needed to check. I reached for the phone, and when I saw the caller ID, my heart skipped. It was my mom. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since our conversation that had shifted something between us. I had thought we were finally on the same page, finally making progress. But I had also promised myself I wouldn't let her back in unless she had truly changed, unless she understood that I needed something different this time. With a deep breath, I pressed answer. Lil? Her voice was soft, cautious, like she wasn't sure if I'd even pick up. I know it's been a while, and I just wanted to check in on you. See how you're doing. For a moment, I was quiet. My emotions were a whirlwind. I had spent so much of my life waiting for her to reach out, hoping she would show me the love I had always craved. And yet, here she was, doing just that, but this time, I was different. I had set boundaries, and I had learned to value myself first. I'm doing well, I said, my voice steady. I'm actually settling into a new place. It's peaceful here. I'm glad to hear that, she said, her voice cracking slightly. You've been through so much, Lil. And I know I wasn't the mother I should have been. I know I hurt you, and I know I failed you. I can't undo that. But I want to try to do better. For you. For us. The old me might have crumbled under the weight of those words. I might have given in, let the floodgates open, and allowed the cycle of hurt to repeat itself. But I didn't. I was strong enough to listen, to acknowledge her pain, but also to protect my own heart. I appreciate you saying that, Mom, I said slowly. But the truth is, I can't keep going back to the past. I'm moving forward, and I need to keep moving in that direction. I need to take care of myself first. I can't fix us anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the tension between us thick in the silence. But then, she spoke again, her voice quieter, more resigned. I understand, Lil. I really do. I want you to know that I love you. And I'll always be here, even if we can't be what we used to be. The lump in my throat was hard to swallow. The old part of me wanted to reach out, to forgive, to let things go. But I knew that forgiveness wasn't something I needed to give her, it was something I needed to give myself. I had already forgiven her in my heart. Now, I was ready to release it all. I love you too, Mom, I said softly. But this is where we need to leave things for now. I need space to grow, and I need to do that on my own. I understand, she whispered. I just want you to be happy. You deserve that. Thank you, I said, and for the first time in a long time, I meant it. We both hung up, and I sat back on the couch, the weight of our conversation still lingering in the air. It wasn't an explosive ending. It wasn't a perfect resolution. But it was a step forward, a mutual understanding that we were both on our own paths now, and that was okay. The days passed, and the sense of peace continued to settle in. I wasn't completely healed, and I knew there would still be challenges ahead. There would be moments of doubt, moments of fear. But I had learned something invaluable. I was in control of my own story now. I didn't need to repeat the toxic cycles. I didn't need to keep running back to the past. I didn't need anyone to fix me or save me. I had already done that. And I had done it all by myself. I found new joy in the little things. A quiet evening with a good book. A phone call with an old friend. A walk through the park, breathing in the fresh air. I started writing again, something I hadn't done in years, and it felt like I was finally finding my voice. I also found new strength in the silence, the peace that I had been too afraid to embrace for so long. There was something so powerful in standing alone, in knowing that I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. And with each new step, I realized that this was the beginning of something new. Something I had been waiting for, whether I knew it or not. It was the beginning of me. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?